Well, I think people are starting to join, so happy Friday, everyone. I'm Ola Strandberg, of course. Very welcome. Um, I thought we would use this day, the Thanksgiving Friday or Black Friday, to check in with you guys that are in the US type of time zones and hopefully have the day off work and are having a relaxing Friday. And it's still a decent hour here in Europe. In our brand new office, I'll give you a tour one of these days when we have gotten some more furniture and a little more order here. I'm very excited to be here this evening. And housekeeping, I'm going to address some of the questions that I've received in advance. I do have my laptop beside me. I'm going to try to keep an eye out for questions as they come in and address those also. I'll try and cover some other topics, more setup related topics that I have responded to through our help desk or otherwise lately. And hopefully you guys will find it useful. And I'm also going to, when this is done, the entire webcast will post that on YouTube as well. So we'll have it archived here on the Facebook page. We'll also upload to YouTube for posterity, and hopefully there will be something of value in there for future reference as well. And the other thing is, I'm going to try and keep it 90 minutes maximum. If you guys seem to be dropping off or I'm getting too tired, I'll leave here in an hour. But 90 minutes max, and then I have to go home and have a relaxing Friday of my own. But without further ado, let's dig into some of the questions that I've received in advance. Daniel Molnar asks, why was the Bowden OS line discontinued? What led the decision to do that? I have a Bowden OS 6 tram, and I think it's a top-tier instrument in every way. You know, the Bowden OS line was the first production line of guitars that we made, and we were really proud of that, I have to say. But there were also some, it turned out really well, and it was very well received, and there are a lot of excellent OS guitars out there. But after we had done them for a while, we just felt that we wanted to implement some upgrades and some changes to that model. One of the things that had happened when we put it into production was that purely for reasons of being able to be able to mass produce these guitars, including the Endurneck, which is obviously a very complicated profile to make and very different from anything that any manufacturer in the world had done before. So for some of these reasons, the neck profile didn't come out exactly as we had intended. It was good, but it could be better, and it could be closer to the original specifications. So we had a lot of discussions, a lot of work with our manufacturer to correct these things and to enhance our product. And some of you may have models of a single batch that was produced under the Bowden OS flag, but with a roasted maple neck. And instead of the Korean-made OEM glow-in-the-dark markers that we had on the side of the fretboard, we had the original Japanese lumen lace. So some of those things were implemented just to enhance the product, and at the same time, we also felt that the Bowden OS line was it's kind of, so it was a swamp ash body, maple top, and then bird's eye maple neck. We upgraded to roasted maple, and then it was just options of the Bowden OS. So it's basically the same specs, 2 different fretboards, multiple colors, 6, 7, and 8 string, tremolo, no tremolo. And while we were happy to say to everyone who asked that this is the perfect guitar for you, so we'd say that to fusion players, to rock players, to prog players, to metal players, gent players. And it is truly that versatile, but we also wanted to introduce something to really give more options to the player in terms of the tonalities of the guitars in their basic form beyond the pickups. So that's how the, we call them the genre models, came about. So that was the classic line, the metal, the prog, the fusion. And then all of those have different material combinations to give different tone character of the guitar. And we named them for some of the characteristics that are particularly prevalent in those genres. And then we took what was the base specifications of what we had always done and how the brand was born, if you will. And that became the Bowden Original. And we were so happy with how that came out. So rather to confuse that with the old Bowden OS guitars, we just decided to drop the OS designation of those guitars. But having said that, the original model ended up in roughly the same price as the Bowden OS, but it's a very much upgraded guitar. We have the metal control cover plate in the back, and all the upgrades I mentioned earlier. With Sir pickups, they're just outstanding on most of the 6 strings, and we implemented the Fishman Fluence pickups on the metal 6 and the 7 and 8 strings. So quite significant upgrades, and just a small adjustment in price. So we just felt it was a good successor to the OS line. I hope that answers it, and obviously we'll be around many more years, and we'll do more things. Who knows what the future holds. Pascal Brill says, will you consider offering more Fishman pickup options for the production models? I'm not exactly sure what you mean. Obviously there are other Fishman pickups than the Fluence Modern, which is what we have in all of them. But you know, anything with options, and many of you have asked about colors. Will you do additional colors for this model or that model? Probably yes, over time. But the thing with options is we have to keep them in stock, and it just becomes very complicated. We're still a very small operation, extremely lean. We run with very few people. and we've limited warehouse space, we have limited capital, so it just becomes tricky to deal with having many different versions of similar guitars. But who knows? I'm not going to say no. Let's see. Sam Freeman. Hi Ola, I just purchased an OS 7, but the previous owner didn't care of the top. I want to restain the body, which is the best method. This is tricky one. I would suggest you talk to someone who paints guitars for a living to get that done. Basically, with our open pore finishes, the stain absorbs into the guitar body. So if you wanted to sand that out, it's a lot of sanding. So a good painter, or study online. As a design criteria for Strandberg guitars, I tried to take care to not do too much proprietary solutions, or do things so that only we could service them, or you had to come for us to us for spare parts, etc. I explored some options early in the design process that would be very specific in terms of construction, etc. Like carbon fiber neck, and I had a twisted neck profile. And I eventually decided to can all of those things, because if they were to arrive in a guitar tech's on a guitar tech's table, odds are that they would just say, no, I can't fix this. So obviously these guitars, they look different. They have some things that are different from other guitars. And the hardware is proprietary to us. But the rest is all conventional lutherie, conventional guitar making techniques that any guitar tech should be capable of fixing. Any painter will be able to paint. Another question here on those topics. Sam Tran. Hi Sam. I bought a used Mass Vidalian. There are some dents on the back of the neck. Can I safely steam them out? Yes. It's made of wood and not composite. It's like any other guitar. So anything that applies that you're used to, that your guitar tech is used to, applies also for Strandberg. The hardware, obviously, again, proprietary, and we try to be very generous with our warranty terms on those. So if you ever have issues with the hardware, just get in touch. We do try to be very generous and just send out replacement parts if something breaks, which is actually very rare. And I'm going to take this opportunity to actually show you something that we haven't had time to announce yet, which is this. I'll try and hold it up so the camera can see. This is a Teflon washer, or a PTFE washer, and it goes here. Between the knob and the housing. So you could just simply unscrew the knob, insert the washer, and put the knob back. And this will make tuning considerably smoother. The force needed to turn these tuners has varied over time and between production batches a little more than we would have wanted to. When these were originally conceived, it was made in much smaller scale, etc., etc. We had better control over everything, and it just worked. But over time, we've seen some variance in surface treatments of the knobs, etc. So that some batches will be hard to turn, other batches will still be very smooth. But this These small washers, they will take care of you. It will make the knobs much, much smoother to turn. We'll make them available for free. We might ask you to help us out with the postage. We'll come up with a mechanism for you to just request these, and we'll send them out. Same thing, again, if anything ever gets worn, you lose the small springs that are in here, you lose the small discs that sit inside the string locks, just get in touch and we'll send them out. Looking for some more questions. Nick McGregor, hi Nick. Why'd you stop selling to Sweetwater? I don't want to buy anything from Guitar Center. My local store can't get your guitars. We haven't sold through Sweetwater. Maybe there was a used guitar there. I don't know. But do feel free to just order online from our website. We have free returns. If there's anything at all you don't like about the guitar, we just send you a return shipment label, and you can return the guitar and you get a refund. So I think we got you covered there. Christopher Tompkins, hello Christopher. Product idea, sell pickguards. Yeah, multiple pickup configurations for classic line. Again, we're back in the keeping stuff in stock question. It's not that I don't want to. I think it's a great thing to have, and I'm not going to say we won't do it, but at the time, again, with the small operation that we are, it's just really hard to deal with these small items and do it in a cost-effective way, and just make sure we keep stuff in stock. It becomes, anything we offer eventually becomes a liability from a business perspective. I don't mean to be crass, but I have some other questions here regarding how did you succeed building a business, and how does one get through the entrepreneurial aspects of building a guitar brand. And unfortunately, one of the things is not doing what's not your core business. So pickguards, multiple colors, all kinds of options, great ideas, and we are doing our best, and I'm sure we'll have more of these things in the future. But as we're growing, we have to really try and focus on doing our core things as good as we can. Looking for some more questions. I want to know about the Bowden bass and a possible Varberg OS. The bass was, I just had some Facebook flashbacks recently in my feed, and apparently it was about 2 years ago since I built the Bowden bass. I brought that to the NAMM show in, must have been 2016, and it basically blew people's minds. It turned out really, really well. And I had just great feedback. And there were some things that I wanted to update in the design and just improve. In particular with the tuners, because the tension on a bass string is higher than a guitar string. And even though the knobs on these tuners are bigger, so you get more torque on them than the guitar tuners, they were stiff. So I've been designing a completely new design of the hardware, and I wanted to carry that over to the guitar hardware. And it's just taking a long time to complete those designs, and fitting everything into the size of a guitar tuner is much more complicated than fitting it into a bass tuner. But with the Teflon washers, it suddenly worked really well on the bass tuners. So actually, right now it's full speed ahead with the bass development. I'm not going to say anything about timelines, what we launch, if it's going to be custom shop, if it's going to be production, or when we'll have stuff ready, because I simply don't know. But I will say that development of the bass is ongoing, and the entirely new hardware design has been pushed back because the need for it isn't as great anymore. But that will come eventually, too, probably. But we're super excited about having the bass development going. It's going to be amazing, I'm sure. Varberg OS, that's also a great question. And the answer is I hope so. What's holding the Varberg back is the complexity of the design. Unfortunately, I don't have one to show you right now near me, but it's a sandwich design, so 3 different layers. Each of these layers has to be CNC'd from both sides and then glued together. So it's basically like building 3 guitars and gluing them together. And then you have to deal with glue squeeze out, and you're dealing with inner corners, and it's just very, very hard to build on an industrial scale. But we'll try and figure it out, and I hope we can pull it off one day. Philippe Ruiz Botero, what could we expect from Strandberg in 2018? We'll see. Announcements, as you know, the Winter NAMM show is coming up in January. It's I guess almost exactly 2 months from now. So you'll see soon enough. NAMM is like the time when we make these announcements. The bigger companies that are more prepared, they'll pre-announce everything before, but we're still working heads down in giving a cool NAMM experience. So we might leak something coming up. I don't know. Nick McGregor, hi Nick. Can you go through doing a setup on a Strandberg? I can talk you through it very briefly, because doing a full setup is probably beyond the realm of this conversation, and we have a video on our website that deals with most of the things, but I'll describe my general workflow for doing a setup, which always starts with making sure that the neck is adjusted. So first of all, you have to tune the guitar to pitch, so the strings are at the correct tension, because the strings will pull the neck up. It will put a lot of tension on the neck and give it this bend, which we call relief. Relief is what we want. It can be overbowed, which is it's too much this way, or it can be underbowed, which is it goes this way. So I'll always start by just sighting down the neck, and then I hold down generally the D string or the G string, on the 24th fret and on the 1st fret. I just press with my finger. I press the string against the 12th fret and see how much of a gap there is there. And I typically just say about the thickness of a business card. So you should be able to put a business card comfortably in underneath. This basically applies for all of these 6, 7, and 8 string models. If there's too much bow, you need to adjust the truss rod, or too much or too little, you need to adjust the truss rod. With your guitar, you will have received one of these. It's a 4mm key, so it's a metric, but that's basically, it's one of the standard dimensions, I should say, so any guitar shop will have these. Truss rod axis is there. If it's bowed too much, you need to tighten this, so you screw it clockwise. So just turn this, not too much. I'd go like 1/8 of a turn, 1/4 of a turn maximum. And then when you've tightened it, pull back a little bit, and then check again. If it's too much, you release it. Or if it's overbowed, this is a double acting truss rod, so it goes both ways. If it's bent backwards, then you loosen it. You turn it the other way, counterclockwise. So once the relief is correct under tension, then you need to check the string height, or the action, if you will. And I have to be honest that I have never measured anything in my life. I just play, and what feels right is right. Some people like low action, some people like high action. I generally just have some intuitive action. But having said that, just working with manufacturers, you have to be able to explain what you're after. I can't tell someone else to, set it just right. I have to give it some measurement. And what we set the guitars up to is 1.5mm action on the high E, to 2mm action on the 12th fret, 2mm action on the low E. But basically, this is purely down to taste. You just want to set it to what's right for you. And to set the action on a Strandberg, it's a little bit involved. It's a little bit different than many other guitars. And it's done by raising and lowering these saddles, which are in fact screws. So they're threaded and they have a groove in them. So to raise them, you unscrew them, so counterclockwise. So just lift the string, and then there's a small locking screw. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. There's a tiny key, 0.9mm, that came with your guitar. So what you need to do is basically loosen this set screw. If you have an older guitar, this set screw doesn't exist. So this is only for more recent guitars. Just loosen that. Then with your thumb or with a pick, you can turn this half a turn at a time, upwards or downwards. When you're happy, you lift the string back on top of the saddle. Tighten this again. And when you've done that for all of the strings, you tune it again to pitch. And when you're happy, that's when it's time to adjust the intonation. Because both the relief of the neck and the height of the saddles will affect intonation. So there's no point in moving the saddle to adjust intonation until these things are done. And the other thing that you also need to take care of before you do this is use new strings. I have another question. Maybe it was on Instagram. I don't remember. There was a question here about the guitar going here. Oliver Messias Brandstedt. Regarding my bow is special. I've had it for a couple of months. I love it, but lately it's begun to sound kind of out of tune with itself when I play certain notes. Do I need to adjust intonation? My guess is your strings are really old, or not even really old. The thing is, all Strandberg, the classic line has conventional nickel silver frets. All other Strandberg guitars has stainless frets. They wear the strings out really quickly. If you look underneath the strings, or if you take them off and look at on the bottom of the strings, you'll see grooves where every fret has been. This kills the intonation completely. So you'll get all kinds of weird phenomenon if you try to intonate a guitar with old strings. Old in the sense that they've actually been damaged by the stainless frets. Yeah, the guitar will start behaving really weird. So before you change your intonation, put a fresh set of strings on it. When you have the strings, pre-stretch them, either with their string stretching tools, or you just do this. Stretch the strings properly, tune them up again, stretch, tune them up. Then give them a push down. Make sure that they break properly over each saddle. Make sure that they break properly across the 0 fret, because this will also affect intonation. And then, not going to go into too much detail, but you take the open string, or actually the harmonic on the 12th fret, and then the fretted note on the 12th fret. Or you could do it even more accurately on the 18th fret, and the harmonic and the fretted note. If this is too high when you fret it, the string is too short. So you need to move the saddle back. If the fretted note is too low, the string is too long, so you need to move the bridge forward. Again, this is the same for Strandberg as any other guitar. What's a little bit involved is you have to loosen the string, or detune it, loosen this, move the saddle back and forth, and then retighten and tune the string back up to pitch. So the first few times you do this, it's can feel cumbersome. But this is a 6mm internal hex. You can either use this key that you received with the guitar, or you can actually put a 6mm Allen key bit in a motorized screwdriver, and just boom, 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 boom. And you can get that done pretty quickly, at least when you're used to it. So I guess that's it for setup. It's just remembering to do those things in that sequence, and not change the order, because then you won't get a perfect result. The other thing that I'll mention, which is a little bit specific to Strandbergs, not exactly, but it's not very common to have a 0 fret. We do for a variety of reasons. The original idea is of course to have an open string to sound the same as a fretted note. So that's like the underlying idea. The other thing is for convenience, because a Strandberg guitar, we've always used anodized hardware, and anodized aluminum doesn't conduct electricity. So what we would do, this is an example, I should have a fixed bridge guitar. What we do on these is ground one of the strings, and then the 0th fret will ground the remaining strings. If the ground isn't done properly, you'll get buzzing and you pick up all kinds of noise. So yeah, this is what I was going to say. So the 0th fret will guide the string in the height dimension, if you will. But the nut, we still have a nut, but all it does is guide the strings sideways to make sure that the string spacing is correct, and that the strings don't move too much over the 0th fret when you do bends and when you play. So what can happen, especially if you change to a lot heavier gauge strings than you had before, is that the string will actually rest on top of the nut and not on the 0th fret. If this is just a little bit, your guitar will sound like a sitar when you play the open strings. You'll get buzzing against the 0th fret. If it's a lot, you maybe won't notice until you try to intonate the guitar. You do the harmonic, and then you do the fretted note, and it's a lot higher in pitch. So you try to push the bridge back, you keep pushing it back and back and back, and it doesn't seem to be possible to intonate. This is the cause. 10 times out of 10, the string actually isn't resting against the 0th fret. Sorry. That was a little bit about setup. Let's see. See how you guys are doing on Instagram for questions. Will models without the Indernic be a possibility? Official DLC. Hi. I have another question. Gunnar James Arcolio, will licensing for use of the Indernic on non-Strandberg instruments ever be made available again? Those are a little bit, well, maybe they're not related. I'll address them together. I think it also ties in with some of the questions that I've received regarding building a business and succeeding in a way. And I think starting this company was not, I think the success factor, or one of the success factors, was that I didn't plan to do this. This was a hobby, and the business made me rather than the other way around originally. And this is important because it didn't start with my fantastic idea, and then I would do a lot of stuff to get people to hook on to that idea, and I didn't start out with this grand plan of making this a business. Instead, this was a hobby project for my own personal enjoyment only, and it caught on. So people asked if they could buy it because, and this is I don't know if it's the first or second most important, but obviously having a unique product with something to offer, unique selling points. That's obviously very important. This concept happened to have it. People started asking for it. I got validation. And only then did I think, maybe this is a business. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. To grow it. And throughout this process, I had a full-time day job. So it was risk-free. I could do whatever mistakes I wanted to. I still had food on the table. So, I mean, this is how it worked for me. And later on, I started realizing, well, maybe this is a business. And it's less than 3 years ago since I quit my day job. So, throughout this process, every decision I make is more and more critical, and it's more and more important, because now it's the food on my table, it's the livelihood of those I care for, it's my holidays, etc. And it's the amazing team that I've built, all the guys that work for Strandberg now. It's their wages and so on. So every decision becomes more and more critical. And if you start with the business idea that you're sure of it's going to work, and you start with the dream, then you have to make those decisions from the start. You have to make those decisions every day. And I just think it's hard. It's hard to really start from scratch, second guessing yourself in every little decision, if it's the right decision or the wrong decision. Will this grow? Will this shrink? So I've had the luxury of being able to build the business, build the airplane while it was in the air, so to speak. And not care too much. But now I do have to care. One of those things is, will we offer conventional necks? We have, in made to measure, which obviously is low capacity, we've always had conventional necks as an option. Out of 110 or so built, I think there's 4 with conventional necks. The original Chris Letchford model that we made and sold was offered with around a C-shaped neck, because Chris actually preferred a C-shaped neck. So went through all kinds of development work to offer a C-shaped neck, and we sold 1, plus 1 for Chris himself. So that investment was really just a throwaway. And EnduroNeck is an intrinsic part of the concept of Strandberg, and it's in a way we have to stand behind it and say this is better. I still maintain that it's not for everyone. I'm not someone who doesn't enjoy it. Is not wrong. So it's never going to be for everyone. But it is part of our unique selling point. It is part of the concept. We do have, if not proper research, we do have a lot of anecdotal evidence that it works, that it does in fact relax the muscles and tendons of your hand and wrist and forearm. It lets you play with less strain, which lets you play longer, play more fluently, etc. So we kind of want to stand behind that and say that this is an entire package. I'm tempted every once in a while to do a C-shaped neck, and who knows, we might. And this brings me to the related question of whether we will offer the Endurneck to other builders, because we did earlier. And those of you that have followed the brand from the start know that I started with, instead of a copyright scheme, I started what's called the copyleft scheme. So basically everything is open. It's like open source in the software industry. And the Bowden shape is still available to individual builders under Creative Commons license, which means that they're free to use it for non-commercial purposes, as long as they attribute me as the original designer and so on. So the Endurneck was an exception, because I actually patented the Endurneck, and I started licensing that to other builders as well. But then going back to what I said earlier about sticking to your core business, it started becoming a distraction. So from a pure workload perspective, I had to pause selling licenses to others. But then there's another aspect, which is Endurneck is basically a trademark. It's our trademark, and it's a very important part of the Strandberg concept. So if I license this to someone else, and this is a complex piece of manufacturing to get right, and if I license this to someone else and they really mess it up, maybe the neck will become unstable and twist in all kinds of ways. Maybe they don't execute the profile correctly. Then that will impact negatively on the Endurneck trademark. And it will ultimately impact negatively on the Strandberg brand at no fault of us. So again, going back to this thing of now this is actually business, a lot of people are relying on it. I have to second guess a lot of things, and licensing the Endurneck to other builders is one of those things. Maybe we'll do it in the future, but for the time being, it's a risk and it's a distraction. So for the time being, it's unfortunately not on the table. See some more questions. I do see your questions kind of scrolling by here. I'll try and catch one in real time and answer, and not just use the canned ones. So someone say hi, Rocky Rants. Possibilities of hollow body or acoustic Strandberg models. Hi Rocky. I would love to. I've had some ideas over the years, but there's always some higher priority that's closer to what we do. So I don't know. I hope so. Basically, we now have access to just amazing manufacturing resources. So now we can do anything. When I started this and it was just a hobby, I was so limited in what I could do, both from a financial perspective, but also from like access to technology, access to manufacturing, which held me back, and that drove the design also. The simplicity of the design of the hardware was driven by lack of resources, lack of money, just having to come up with the simplest possible design. But now I could accomplish anything. So now it's just a question of prioritizing what to do, and yeah, it'd be really fun to do a solid or a real hollow body or an acoustic at some point. Alexander Wiebe person. Hi Ola, is there any dealers in Denmark or South Sweden? Not yet. You can still buy direct from strandbergguitars.eu, and we actually, from starting yesterday, we have free shipping on guitars within the EU. So order, 2-week free return. Anything you don't like, return it in its original condition and original box for a full refund. So hopefully we can figure you out. Adam, hi Adam, solid body nylon 7-string would be delicious. Yeah, I agree. Speaking of nylon strings, some of you might have seen our collaboration with Boss and our new V guitar that we've developed with Boss, which is a really, really cool piece of technology. I don't have one here, but there are several demos on YouTube. It's an amazing guitar. We will have them in stock any day. Guitar in the UK will have them in stock any day. I believe Sweetwater will carry them in the US. I'm not entirely sure of that fact, but the primary sales channel of the V guitars will be the normal Boss, Roland and Boss retail channels. This is an amazing, amazing guitar which has modeling on board, so it models vintage or Les Paul type humbucker pickups. It models Fender-ish, Strat-ish, Tele-ish single coil pickups, but it also models a nylon string acoustic, a steel string acoustic, a jazz bass, and it has some synth modeling. It's a really fun guitar, and I think a lot of people in a lot of situations, those nylon string acoustic simulations or modelings will do the job. It's a really cool guitar. Looking at some more questions. I assume you will have a booth at NAMM in January, correct? Absolutely. It's booth 3140. Which is, for those of you that know NAMM, the floor plan is completely, they started with a clean sheet and it just reallocated every single booth. So we're not in the drum section anymore. We are in the electric guitar section, which will be really cool. We're in a cluster of cool companies like Dark Glass, Dingwall Basses, and a lot of other cool companies in one of the corners. So if you do have a chance, make sure to check us out. We've splashed out on a big booth, and we'll show a lot of product. And watch out for an announcement on Monday for some other NAMM-related activities. Or was it Monday? We'll have an announcement in the coming week. I think it was on Monday. Let's see if I can find some more questions. Jesko Bressam, hi from Germany. Hi. If I was to purchase direct from the EU store, can I pick it up in Sweden? What we usually do is we have a dealer here in town, which is called Uppsala Musikverkstad, and they are the only actual Strandberg dealer in Sweden. They're right in town. They're 2 minutes walk from the train station. So what we usually do in these scenarios is organize a pickup in their shop. Because they can spend all the time you need. They have all if you wanted to buy something else along with the guitar, even if you want to trade in your guitar or do something like that. They can help you in a much better way than we can. And sometimes if we can take a visitor to our office, we do that, but that's very exceptional. But it has happened. I'm looking for some more questions, and I think Facebook is filtering them out from where I'm trying to look at them. So post me some live questions and I'll try to pick them up as they come by. Kevin Burstler, hi Kevin. Sorry if you talked about this, but a neck-through design would be awesome. Yes, I agree. And I don't have one to show right here, but we've done quite a few neck-throughs in our made-to-measure production. And really the neck accessibility is really second to none. And they're really cool. And we're going to show a whole bunch at NAMM. That's one tiny pre-announcement. I think we will eventually make a production model neck-through. I hope so. So it's coming. Nicolas Lebel, what are your favorite woods for tone, but also for aesthetic? Hi, Nicola. That's a great question, and it's one of those questions. The great tone wood debate is like the most heated topic on the internet, I think. So I won't go into that too much. I'm just going to say that my favorite wood is whatever wood makes you happy. Anything you put in a guitar, as long as the guitar holds together structurally, will make some kind of sound. And in different contexts, different sounds just work. And I think ultimately what makes you play what you do and makes you play well and feel inspired and have a good night, all that will reach the audience. And that's not really about, you know, the sound that comes out of the speaker front of house, because that sound is not what you're experiencing as you're playing the guitar. So the important thing is how the guitar makes you feel and how that influences your playing. And that's small things from the tactile, you know, the vibration of the guitar against your body, just the mojo, your memories associated with that guitar, how easy it is to play, all those things. So really, in that respect, choosing one wood over another is not important. It's what works for you and how this instrument inspires you. But then obviously some things on a guitar can be objectively good or bad. Tuners hold tuning better than others. A lot of people think that sustain, so how long a note rings, is you want that to be as long as possible, because you can always remove stuff from a signal. You can't really add stuff to a signal. So we try to provide the maximum, if you will, a high fidelity type signal with good separation between the notes, or good separation with whatever note each string is playing. So once you start with a good signal, you can destroy that and make it worse, if you will, to fit whatever context. So a lot of that comes down to the construction of the actual guitar, and we've come to realize that the hardware is really a very important aspect of this, and having as little mass as possible between the string and the guitar, the body itself, really makes a difference. So if the string is anchored in 2 points, up here at the headstock and down here at the bridge, and as you hit that string, whatever you pick it with will impact the whatever overtone pattern that it will generate a great deal. Where you pluck the string will make a huge difference. So all these things, the sound is in the player, the sound is in the hand of the player. Completely true. But also, with everything else alike, whatever sits between these two anchor points, they will also shape the signal that comes out of the string. And different species of wood will make the string vibrate differently. A lot of guitar pickups won't notice. A lot of signal chains, they're so lo-fi that they don't notice. And this is the reason why a lot of people say that no, tone wood doesn't matter. It's just the pickup, it's the electronics. They're not wrong. But with a high fidelity type signal chain, the differences are discernible. You can hear them if you have a good enough signal chain. Again, will that carry through front of house, through the house speakers and to the audience? Probably not. But it's part of your experience as a player, and your playing is impacted by these imperceptible things. So I say tone wood matters, definitely. And favorites, I don't know, I mean, look at the Bowden original. That's an evolution of the brand, and it is going back to basically those specifications that were the original specs where everything started, which is a swamp ash body, a maple top. Now we do roasted maple necks, roasted maple boards. If I had to pick any favorite combination, it's those. It's a very versatile combination that works in most different scenarios. In the fusion guitars, there's an alder body, powerful row board, slightly meatier tone. The metal guitars, basswood body, ebony board, a little brighter tone. And to tie back to an earlier discussion with going away from the Bowden OS, which was like everything for everyone, and doing these stronger models with providing more options, is that sometimes it feels like we've cornered these guitars in. So the fusion is for fusion players, the prog is for prog players, the metal is for metal players. But of course they aren't. Basswood guitars with ebony boards, they sound amazing in any music style. It's up to the player. Again, so any of these models will work in any genre. We do have some aesthetics that set them apart, but from a sonic perspective, it's whatever works for you as a player. Lucian Chan, what's the fretboard wood on the right? This is Pau Ferrot. So the Fusion models were always spec'd with Pau Ferrot, but simply for production reasons and just a general shortage of Pau Ferrot since we started, they have been rosewood for some time. We are making the change to Pau Ferrot, and of course, unless you might not be aware, but there's a new legislation, or recently new legislation that puts export controls on rosewood, so it makes it really cumbersome to import and export for commercial reasons. So basically every guitar manufacturer in the world is struggling with that right now. Johnny Stefacek, will there be more models with a normal scale, 25.5 inch and hardtail bridge? That's a possible yes. I don't know. I mean, we've done a fair number in the Made-to-Measure. It is an option in the custom shop already, so you can order a 25.5 inch scale. We'll see how things evolve for production guitars on a straight scale. The reason we started doing it, of course, is the fan will kind of accommodate this windshield wiper type motion that you do with your arm. So it's more relaxing to play on the very slight fan that we use. And on the 7 and 8 strings, it really has a lot of tonal benefits with the longer scale length on the heavier strings. On the 6 string, the tonal benefits are less obvious, they're less apparent. And as you know, we have some truly amazing artists that do a lot of fingerstyle playing, a lot of two-handed tapping, and that's part of their trademarks. And well, Yvette Young, Sarah Longfield, and we have some other people that might come from a or a fingerstyle acoustic background, like Adrian Bellew and Jackie Bastek, that do a lot of two-handed tapping, and it becomes unergonomic for their right hand with that fan. And obviously there are a lot of players like that where the ergonomics are working against them, so to speak. So there are valid reasons for providing an option, I think, and we'll see how things go. Should I attempt this name? Abradeep Banerjee. Hi Ola, greetings from India. Hey Abradeep, good to see you. What are the chances of holding the knife edges sharp for a long run? Is there any option of a floating bridge based on ball bearings, either a ZR type or something similar to Tremking? Excellent question, and something that has been addressed from the start with Strandberg tremolos. The original tremolo, and I actually set this, organized this whiteboard specifically for today. So let me try and do this. The very first Strandberg tremolo had a housing that looked like this and was screwed into the guitar body. And then there were two bearings in that. And then the base plate that you used here would come like this. And it also had two holes. And depending on where you put this little axle, you would change the pivot point of the tremolo. I'll get back to that before I describe it further. But the important thing is the first ever Strandberg tremolo was a conventional knife edge with the so the base plate was shaped like this, and you could insert a knife edge here, and it was basically sharp on both sides, so you could flip it around if they ever got worn. So that was the first ever design. But this, I talked earlier about when I started out and this was a hobby and how limited my resources were. Having these hardened edges made was ridiculously expensive. So I moved away from that and made the needle bearing design. I tried ball bearings, but that actually didn't sound good. It had a clear impact on the sound. The knife edge was much better. I tried both metal and ceramic bearings. And then I found the needle bearings, which actually worked. But then I had this idea of, instead of, so this is how a conventional tremolo works. It's a post like this, screwed into the guitar body. And then the knife edge that you were asking about. And this moves up and down on this sharp edge. And if that gets worn, it might not return to pitch or stay in tune. And some of these designs, all you can do is throw them away. Others do have replaceable edges. But I wanted to get away from this, and I wanted to make it easy to replace parts if they ever got worn. So I flipped this whole thing around. So the new Strandberg tremolo has the knife on this post, and it basically has a notch in the tremolo base plate instead. So that will pivot against this knife edge. What this looks like in reality is this. So that's the post with the knife. And in the tremolo base plate itself, I don't know if it's light enough to see, but these inserts, you can replace them very easily. Just unscrew and pop a new one in there if it ever gets worn. But then this brings us to one of the more complicated things with the tremolo, which sometimes I fear maybe it was over-engineered. Because I do get a lot of questions on how to set up the new trems. What I wanted to do was offer a tremolo where you could choose yourself what the feel would be. If it would be a soft trem with a lot of flutter, and that would not necessarily do the dive bomb thing, but a very subtle tremolo effect. Or you could adjust it to be stiffer and more aggressive. And to do that, what you do is basically change the pivot point, the tremolo. So, you know, a seesaw that you have in your playgrounds. If your child sits there and you sit up here, what's going to happen? This goes straight down and the tile flies off. But if you move closer, you can actually use this and you balance, and that's it's the relationship between these two arms that makes it balance. And the exact same thing happens on a guitar tremolo. So if the pivot point sits here, and there's a string, let's say this is our, it's a very poor drawing. And let's draw it in here. There's the pivot point. The string pulls there, and then we have the springs on the underside of the guitar. They pull it that way. So it's really this distance in relation to that distance that determines how stiff this will feel and how much the string will actually move back and forth when you use the tremolo. So going back to these inserts inside the base plate, they're actually shaped like this. They have two notches. So if you put the tremolo in the lower one, then let's draw the string in. This is the arm, the pivot arm for that position. But if you put it in this position, it's a shorter lever. So with everything the same, this position will put less force on the springs and it becomes softer, more fluttery, and less happens as you use the tremolo. When it's in this position, it's more aggressive. It puts more tension on the springs. In this position, you probably need 3 springs. In this position, you're fine with 2 springs. So basically, just from an engineering perspective, this was a cool idea, and it really does make a big difference. But it certainly complicates setting the guitar up, and it's certainly a potential element of confusion as when you change strings. Perhaps the tremolo falls off the point where it was sitting, and you put it back in the wrong one, and you don't necessarily notice unless you know what's going on. It's not obvious what happened. So I'm not going to talk more about it right now, but now you're aware of it. There is another video on the support section of the website that covers this in a little more detail. One day we might have more of a user guide that covers this. But I will say that the original guitars that are currently being made, they come with 2 springs. This one, the Fusion, they come with 2 springs, or 3 springs, and they're mounted in this position from the factory. But these things might change over time, how they come from the factory. But it's reasonably simple to change. Just consider that this obviously has to be, if you're going to mount it in the upper position, this has to be screwed out like this, and the tremolo rests against here. If you put it in the lower position, you need to screw this down the equivalent amount and set the trem back. Otherwise, your action will be way too low. If you try to put it here, the strings will fret out against the fretboard, and vice versa. If it was originally in this position and you mount it in this position after string change, your action will be really high, and this is the explanation. We talked earlier also about setup and how to raise the action. Another nice side effect of having these posts is you can use this key to go through the hole and actually adjust the global string heights of the trem guitars by adjusting the height of the posts. Let's see if I can spot some other questions. Do all production guitars have the same nuts? I mean to ask if there are various nut or head systems for the production models. That's Kevin Bursler. Hi, Kevin. The production guitars do have basically the same nuts. They're molded so that they're not cut, and we use the same molds for all 6 strings and all 7 strings and all 8 strings. And we have an associated question from Gerard Salaya. Hi, Gerard. Will the modular nut ever be made available outside MTM, so made to measure? And the modular nut is, for those of you that haven't seen it, it's basically a miniature unit like this. So it's a piece like this saddle that sits in a small housing. So in place of the 0 fret nut combination, it's a small insert that sits here, and you can raise and lower this saddle in the nut, just as you do with on the fret on the bridge side, which lets you basically adjust over time, and it won't wear out the same way a 0 fret can, and you can adjust it to your liking. And also, obviously with a conventional nut, you will use a file or something to cut the slots. If you cut it deep, you have to throw it out and start over. With our modular nuts, if you cut it too deep, just raise it half a turn and you're back. So you can do these operations a lot of time, and you never have to replace parts, or if you do have to replace them, just unscrew it, throw it away, and put a new one in, and you start fresh. Also, if your desired action is right in between, because obviously you turn half a turn, that's 0.25 millimeter height difference. If your desired action is in between, just file down that slot and you'll find your sweet spot. So the modular nut is nice, and I think just like with Formula One cars, they'll drive the development, and then technology trickles down. Who knows? One day we might have the modular nuts because it makes sense. Certainly a lot of things have come about in the production guitars in that way. These back plates, they started in the made-to-measure production only. Then they came into the custom shop, and now they're on all our guitars. So that's generally how things have been in the past. I'm gonna just time check. 4 minutes left. Wilbur Rosen, can you make up to 27 frets or 29 frets guitar? We have done a few guitars with a few extra frets on them. The issue is with the accessibility here in the lower horn area. Obviously, put enough frets on them, you want to be able to reach them, and I don't want to. If you laid the 6, 7, and 8 string on top of each other, you'd see that the outline is different. They've been modified, and if you look through all of the made-to-measure guitars that we made, laid them on top of each other, you would see that especially the rear here, this portion here, is different on them, and you'll sometimes notice that this lower horn is different too. And that's just to accommodate different scale lengths and make that work. So there are small variations. But I don't want to do too much changes, especially on this, because it just affects the aesthetics of the guitar. So yeah, it can be done in theory. I'm not going to try to pronounce this name, but hi Kay, we met at the Music Zoo, I remember. Are you planning on updating the grounding scheme on the next hardware revision? Would that also make it to the production models? Yes, actually. I don't know if I did it. Yeah. Here is an upcoming change, which probably won't show up on camera. If these string locks are a slightly different design, they have a smaller hole that sits further down and they're a little bit lower, which will help, it will improve the break angle over the 0 fret area. Make that a little steeper. And the other thing is that this actually has a laser cut metal plate underneath, which serves multiple purposes. One is it provides the string ground across the strings through this metal plate. And what it also does, it reinforces this area because over time, if you over tighten these string locks, they can start to wiggle because there's a small pin that sits in the wood and can actually damage the wood. So this plate will reinforce this entire area and serves the secondary purpose of providing a string ground, which I don't know exactly when this will hit production, but it will. It is an enhancement. And that makes it also easier to use the modular nuts, of course, if we ever want to do that. And with that, actually out of time. So thank you to everyone that's been watching. I haven't paid perfect attention to this monitor, but we were well over 100 for a good time. I think we've been over 80 most of this time, which is mind-boggling and amazing. Thank you ever so much for listening to me for all this time.